So earlier this week, I did a thing.
And there it is. Goodbye, A7S III. Bye.
I sold the Sony A7S III, and before you get to the comments and be like, why would you ever do that? The A7S III is such a perfect hybrid camera. This was my choice. I'm free to do whatever I want with whatever camera I have or don't have. But I've actually been thinking about selling the Sony A7S III for about 4 or 5 months now. Honestly, ever since I got the Sony A7RV. So I'm gonna tell you my 5 reasons, maybe 5 stupid reasons, why I sold the A7S III and bought the FX3 again. All right, so you see 3 different cameras. I'll get to that later in the video, but first reason why I sold the A7S III is because I think the A7RV is a better video camera. That's right, I said it. The A7RV is a better video camera for several reasons. First of all, autofocus performance on the A7RV is insane. It has that dedicated AI processor so that you can recognize people's faces, I think up to 8 people's faces, and then tracks that specific person's face accurately even if they're in a crowd. That feature is really great specifically for wedding filmmakers, because if you want to focus on the bride or groom, like have the camera memorize their face and you can track them all day long. Like, it's so great. But for people like me, people that shoot themselves out in public because they're making videos for YouTube, if I wanted to film myself far away and say that there is a crowd, if I've set the camera to focus on my face, I know that I will be in focus 100% of the time. So that is a very, very useful feature. Also, stabilization on the A7RV is better than the A7S III. I mean, Sony IBIS is pretty decent for the most part, but the standard stabilization on the A7RV is really, really good. And then using active mode stabilization on the A7RV is really, really, really good. So for someone like me that travels a lot and likes to film smooth looking B-roll without having to bring a gimbal, the stabilization on the A7RV will give me those smooth shots. Not to say that the A7S III can't, it totally can. It's just that the A7RV does a better job. And as much as I love filming with the A7S III, there was a feature that I missed using when I had the A7 III, and that's crop mode. And when I had the A7 III, I use crop mode all the time. Like, it is such a useful feature if you want to zoom in even more on a shot. With the A7S III, you can only use crop mode when you're filming in HD, but come on, 4K. But with A7RV and even the A7 IV, you can use crop mode to zoom in even further on your shot. And honestly, ever since I got the A7RV, like, I've been using this camera for about 90% of the time. And because I use the A7RV as my main vlogging camera, I just don't like the idea of the A7S III collecting dust, you know what I mean? Like, I'd much rather it go to a person who's going to use it, which is why I sold it to this young fella who is starting up their own video business, which is totally cool. He got it for a really good deal, and so good for him. But the video capabilities of the A7RV are really close to the A7S III. I mean, you can film 4K 10-bit internal video, you got dual card slots, you got a full HDMI port, you can stream with the camera by plugging a USB-C cable to your computer. Again, it's got crazy good autofocus, insane stabilization, and the A7RV has this really cool 4-axis screen. I mean, when you're vlogging, of course, having a flip-out screen is really nice so that you can see yourself on the screen. But when I'm behind the camera, I actually prefer tilting the screen because it keeps the horizon level to me. I just find it better filming this way, also taking photos. So having the 4-axis screen is just nice to give you those options. And of course, the A7S III is going to be the better camera to film at low light situations. The A7RV does a decent job filming low light situations, just not as good as the A7S III. But that's one of the reasons why I got the FX3. I'll talk about that later. But overall, I think the A7RV is a better video camera. Actually, more accurately, it's a better hybrid camera for photography and video. That's probably better to say. I mean, okay, A7S III, better video camera overall. The A7RV is a better hybrid camera. There you go. I'm sure I made a lot of people mad. Reason number 2 why I sold the A7S III is, well, it's actually a very stupid reason. It's because I can't fit it in my camera bag with a lens attached. No joke. That's one of the reasons why I sold the A7S III.
Just look how easily it just slides into my camera bag. You know, that squared off design is really, really nice.
Now, since I've been traveling a lot, it's very important to me to bring multiple cameras in my camera bag, and I'd much rather have my cameras attached to lenses versus pulling out a camera body and then attaching a lens to it and then go out and grab my shot. I like working fast. I'd much rather just pull out my entire camera setup, take my shot, and just be on my way. And since the A7RV has been my main camera, I've always attached the 16-35 lens on the A7RV in my camera bag and just pulled it out whenever I needed to get a shot. If I wanted to use the A7S III at the same time, I'd have to pull out the camera body, attach the lens, and then set it up. And while that's fine and normal for most people, I found that really, really annoying. Like when I was in Yosemite with some friends, like of course we did some hiking, but whenever we found a shot, you know, we took out our bags, whipped out our cameras and started shooting, but then I wanted to use the A7S III and I was like, oh, I gotta attach it, oh, I'm gonna miss the shot. And that's been a common theme throughout all my travels last year, and I don't wanna do it anymore. I just thought, wouldn't it be great to have a secondary camera that just fits in your camera bag that has a lens already attached? Like if only the EVF of the A7S III was chopped off, like almost a squared off design, like that would solve my problem. Oh, wait a minute, the FX3. Look, it's a squared off design. It's essentially an A7S III, just in a cinema camera body. And because of the squared off design, I can easily pack into my camera bag with a lens attached. And so, yeah, that's reason number 2 why I sold the A7S III, is because I couldn't fit it in my camera bag with a lens attached. I know it's probably the stupidest reason why I sold the camera, probably a very stupid reason for anyone to sell their camera, but this was my preference. I'd much rather pull out a camera with the lens already attached from my camera bag, and so there you go. Reason number 3 why I sold the A7S III is because of the FX3. My friend Armando just swears by the FX3, like he just loves that camera, and he's filmed some pretty awesome stuff with that camera. And when I was traveling with Chris to Yosemite, he brought his FX3, and the stuff that he shot with that camera looked beautiful. And since that trip, Chris and I are actually planning some projects down the road, some pretty big projects beyond YouTube. And so for me as a filmmaker, I just think it's nice for me to have a cinema camera to at least match the footage of my other colleagues. And for me as a filmmaker, like I've always wanted to have a cinema camera in my arsenal. Like I think the FX9 or FX6 are a bit too much camera for me. Like I'm not a DP, I'm not a cinematographer, I'm just a boy. But the FX3 is just the right size, does everything the A7S III does, but geared towards more video production. But it's essentially an A7S III in a cinema camera body, so I don't feel like I've lost the A7S III, I just got a beefier version of it. But yeah, I just want to have a cinema camera in my arsenal. Reason number 4 why I sold the A7S III is because I wanted to have a camera in each category of Sony's camera line. For the cinema line, I have the FX3. For the full frame alpha line, I have the A7R5. And for the Sony ZV line, I have the ZV E10. And the reason why I wanted a camera in each of those categories is so that I can better serve my audience, better serve you. I love cameras in general. I love geeking out on just tech and gear, and I personally love showing what a certain camera can do. And for some of you, you might have a cinema camera like the FX3, and so I kind of want to use the FX3 as best I can to show you some cool things that you can do with the camera. Same thing for you hybrid shooters that have cameras like the A7R5 or A7S III or A7 IV. I want to show you some really cool things that you can do with a camera like the A7R5. And then there are some of you that have entry-level cameras like the ZV-1, ZV-E10. In fact, my video about the ZV-1 versus ZV-E10 has gotten the most comments and most interactions in the past year or so. And so, yeah, I'd probably say that the vast majority of my audience are into the ZV camera line. But if I ignored cameras like the ZV-E10 or ignored cameras like the A7R5 and just focus on the FX3, that means I've ignored the vast majority of my audience, and I don't want to do that. Like, I want to serve as many people as I can and just show you some cool things I can do with different cameras. And so, yeah, reason number 4 why I sold the A7S III is because I kind of want to dip my toes on the Sony Cinema line, the Alpha line, and the ZV line. So yeah, there you go. I did it for you. Reason number 4 is for you. And the last reason why I sold the A7S III is because I just wanted to. Like, there's nothing wrong with the A7S III at all. Like, it is a near perfect camera. But I'm kind of weird. I like changing things up every now and then, and I thought it would be fun to sell the A7S III. And when I sold it to the young guy who was starting a business, like, that made me really happy. A camera that has served me so well for many years now is now going to serve this young lad start his own business. Like, that felt pretty good, you know? And I'm always gonna be the guy like experimenting and trying new things with different cameras. This is because I love camera gear. Like, I geek out on this stuff. And so yeah, reason number 5 why I sold the A7S III is just something I wanted to do for me. So there you go, 5 reasons why I sold the A7S III. Woo, wow, look at this camera line though. Like, this is nice, right? This is really nice. And now that I have these 3 cameras, you might be wondering, Sid, what happened to your Sony A7 IV? Sold it. Yeah, I'm weird.